Bring in show music, please.
Today on Squawk Pod, President Trump's tariffs ruled illegal by an appeals court. More on where the case goes next.
I think the Supreme Court
may strike it down.
Yeah.
McDonald's is launching extra value meals and lowering menu prices. We've got the mixed scoop with CEO Kempczinski.
The reality is that if you weren't using the app and you didn't buy McValue, where did you find value on the menu?
And OpenAI rolling out new guardrails for ChatGPT after a tragic use case unfolded.
There are other people who are using these services, and it's quite helpful to them.
I'm CNBC producer Zach Vallese. It's Tuesday, September 2nd, 2025. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We're live from the NASDAQ market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Summer's over, folks.
You're here.
Back to work.
Sprint is on. This
Back
is when
to
it all
work.
begins.
This is it. The mad
back.
rush.
Yeah.
Takes us all the way into the holidays.
We were both out.
Yeah.
I almost didn't come in this morning.
Yeah, why?
Airlines now have carte blanche to do whatever they want.
Yes, I've experienced
They say
this recently, too.
Air traffic controllers. It's when companies report earnings and they say it's weather. So I got in at 1 o'clock last night.
Did you really?
I did it on the way out. We were delayed by 4 hours. So I almost didn't come in this morning.
But you felt you missed us so
No,
much.
I figured if I didn't come in.
Like, no.
No, I figured if I didn't come in that people on Twitter would say I was dead. Or even worse,
exaggerated.
Right, even worse that I was retired.
Right.
So neither of those things are true.
You're here. You're just tired.
I am tired.
Many of President Trump's global tariffs now in doubt following a high-profile court ruling. Cassella joins us with the latest. Where are we?
Guys, good morning. So to catch everybody up, this was a federal appeals court ruling late on Friday that the vast majority of President Trump's tariffs are now illegal. It doesn't change the status quo, though, for now, but it does set the stage for a showdown at the Supreme Court, potentially later this year or early next. So it was a 7-4 ruling from the appeals court, which upheld a May decision from the Court of International Trade. Both courts now have found that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA as it's known, does not give the president the authority to impose such broad tariffs as we've seen him do. The court wrote, reading the phrase regulate importation from that statute to include imposing these tariffs is a wafer-thin reed on which to rest such sweeping power. The president has argued that a loss in court would lead to severe economic downturn. On Sunday, he wrote that if a radical left court is allowed to terminate these tariffs, almost all of the investment we've seen committed this year and much more will immediately be canceled. In many ways, he wrote, we would become a third world nation. Now, the Justice Department has said it will appeal. That's what likely sends this to the Supreme Court. But all tariffs do remain in place for now. The appeals court delayed implementation of its decision until October 14th. So much more to come. Depending on where SCOTUS lands, all of the country-specific tariffs are the ones that could ultimately be in jeopardy. That's everything imposed this term against China, Canada, and Mexico, many other countries, 70 or so as well. But those sector-specific tariffs are the ones, those are going to stay no matter what. Those are the ones in place on metals and cars already. They're the ones in the pipeline on things like semiconductors, furniture, and other things. So a very big deal here for a huge portion of Trump's tariffs, but not all of them. Guys.
Okay, can we just talk about the implications of this in terms of if, in fact, the Supreme Court actually would side not with President Trump, but with those suing in this instance, then what happens? Because there's still other methods with which the White House, without using Congress, my understanding is, can still continue to keep these tariffs on or effectively implement new ones.
They would have to implement new ones, but there are many ways that they could do it. They could, of course, go to Congress and ask them for help, but there are other statutes. The reason, though, that the president in this term decided to go this route is that this is much faster and much more powerful. He didn't do this in the first term, in part because advisors warned him. They thought it was sort of on legally shaky ground. Not to get too deep into the details, but there's Section 301 of trade law. That's what he used to impose tariffs against China in the first term. Those are still in place, unchallenged. There's Section Section 122, as it's known, which does deal with balance of payments. It's much more about trade deficits, which is what the president is chiefly fighting here, he likes to say. But those have to be temporary. They can only be as high as 15% and can only last 150 days. So there are definitely other methods here. What we don't know, and I think one of the biggest questions before the next court, the Supreme Court, will be whether the administration will have to repay all of the tariffs that have come in so far, or whether that at least will hold, and then maybe they just have to stop collecting future ones. We don't know the answer to that yet.
This was not a surprise to us. We've talked about this again and again. The rationale, it was, just as Megan said, it was the quickest way to do it, but it never really legally looked like it was anything that was going to stand
Right, but the
up.
big issue has been...
Well, no, there's many other ways to do it, but it's just going to take longer.
Well, there's many other ways to do it, but you can't do it to the same degree necessarily. So part of the issue has always been, if you're a business leader, do you play chicken with the system, with the White House?
Or if you're another country.
Or if you're another country, do you play chicken with the system and say, I'm going to wait this out and try to figure out what kind of craziness is going on?
I don't think the Supreme Court is going to... I think the Supreme Court
may strike it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the people that are on there, we've seen already, as much as the left would like to say it's a stacked court, they have... I'm sure he's mad at 3 or 4 of them right now. Some of the ones he's appointed, I'm sure he's mad at.
He could take it to Congress and ask
You could.
to sign off on it. He controls the Senate at this point, but it probably would be a tight vote.
Well, until the gerrymandering gets done. But who knows how that's going to shake out this as well.
Megan, want to thank you. Meantime, breaking news, Kraft Heinz announcing it plans to separate into 2 companies. The names of the companies will be determined at a later date, but one, which it refers to as Global Taste Elevation, will include brands like Heinz, Philadelphia cream cheese, Kraft mac and cheese, that's obviously the favorite, and other shelf-stable meals. And then the other company is going to be called, or at least temporarily, North American Grocery, not nearly as exciting, which is going to include brands like Oscar Mayer, Kraft Singles, and Lunchables. It expects the deal to close in the second half of next year. And that stock moving not so much on the back of that news.
It's only 6:09. We're uncomfortable with each other. I feel like we got to get back.
Warmed up and talked
get
over
warmed up,
the
talk.
break.
What are you talking about? Let's talk about everything. Where do you want to go? Let's do Lisa Cook? You want to do Lisa Cook now or later?
I was going to tell you that. No, I told you how much I like Park City, right? And unfortunately, I can't afford it. And I was wondering, how do you get one of them Lisa Cook mortgages? Then I think I could probably. Telluride's nice too. I was in both of those, and I can't afford either. Well, but I think
if you turn one into a rental property, you'll be just fine.
Did you and Leisman happen to talk about that last week?
You'll be just fine
At all?
We were holding down the fort, and we had lots of
Did
conversations.
you happen to bring that?
Yes, we've discussed this
just
at great length.
Just wondered.
At great length.
Okay, good. We will talk about that.
We got some other breaking news this morning. We can get maybe AI to speak for us right here. The company just out with a blog post detailing how it's going to work to try to improve the behavior of its AI models during what they're describing as sensitive interactions. This follows, and we talked about it on this broadcast, actually had the lawyer at the table with us last week, which was just really such a tragedy. That lawsuit filed against the company last week on behalf of a parent of a 16-year-old who committed suicide. The complaint accused ChatGPT of wrongful death, design defects, and failure to warn about risks. And you may recall the student actually was showing ChatGPT pictures of the noose and literally asking the ChatGPT whether it would hold him, how to do it. I mean, the whole thing.
But
and it went all the way.
I had to get caught up on that today. How did AI try to get him to keep this away from his parents?
There were all sorts of dialogues about whether you could tell your parents, not to. I mean, it was wild, and just in the most terrible way. I'm surprised that we haven't heard more from OpenAI about this, but this is their first shot across the bow today. They, by the way, they're not trying to from what we understood as of last week, they weren't trying to settle the case or anything else. In the blog post, OpenAI saying that over the next 120 days, it's going to prioritize expanding interventions to more people in crisis, making it easier to reach emergency services and expert health, enabling connections to trusted contacts, and strengthening protections for teens. That's important. The company says it will be guided by a council on well-being and AI, which includes an expanding network of more than 90 physicians across 30 different countries. It's going to roll out new parental controls as well this month. The biggest issue with all of this stuff is the longer the conversation goes on, the more potential for the degradation of the controls to work. So if you were to ask it in the first 10 sort of conversations about something that it knows it can't really answer, it'll stop you. But if this conversation goes on, in this case, for months, you can see how the system starts to, when I say degrade, meaning the guardrails of things it shouldn't talk to you about or would otherwise stop you on day one. If you had gone on and said, I need your help building a noose, it would stop you right now. But if you talked it and talked and talked and talked and talked to it for on the same thread for a very long time, that's when things go wrong, and that's what they're going to try to fix.
I don't understand.
Because the way this whole system algorithm seems to work is they can put certain guardrails on for certain types of conversation, and so when you're having this dialogue with it early on, if you ask things directly.
But you normalize it by bringing it up again and again and again. And
I don't understand how it happens. My understanding is, and by the way, I've had this experience not with terrible kinds of questions, but I've had this experience where after the 30th question, clearly the quality, even the quality of the answers degrades sometimes, and things start to break. So that's sort of where I think
this is like
we need to figure this out.
Pandora's box, too, because you can imagine. I could think just off the top of my head, come up with 10 things that you wouldn't want people looking into, whether it's building a bomb or,
But you can find those things on the internet.
I know you
right
can.
Now. I guess the difference is.
But how do you don't want it to be where you're deciding what people can see and what people can't see again. You're back to the whole
this goes back to the question
again.
Well, but right, and that's the separate issue, which is what I think is being addressed this time in terms of parents are going to have certain controls over it. It will alert the parents if there's questions asked that are dangerous or other types of things, and but that gets into a whole other privacy question for a lot of people as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Some of these systems, like Anthropic, is very cut and dry. They basically stop any kind of conversation about any certain types of things to the point where some people think it's not useful. And so this becomes this very interesting question of uses being useful versus dangerous, and sort of where that line is, the context of the way you're asking the question. If you were asking a question about hopefully not building a bomb, but in some kind of context where you wanted to learn how to do something for a science project, that might be one instance.
But if you're asking it, and you're an adult, would it alert authorities?
And so these. I don't think it's going to alert authorities in the same way, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you think about it. Yeah. If you were to search on Google, Google is not sending a note to the authorities. We've talked about. I know we've had debates about gun use, but a lot of time, almost every time there's been a mass shooting in America, the shooter, who's gone and killed lots of people, has taken to Google prior, because it shows up in all of the evidence afterwards, asking all sorts of wild questions about whether credit card companies know about the guns.
That's the question. What is the difference
else.
Between a Google search and an AI large language model?
Well, the large language model can, in this case, and what we saw last week, and hopefully folks can go back and watch the video, because you can really learn about the whole case, and you can go online and learn about it as well. This was encouraging him to do this.
Oh my God.
I mean, this was a very different scenario.
Well, that's a whole different.
And that's different than a direct search. So
that's horrible.
It's just another example of we really need to think about what we're doing here. Yeah. Although we don't want to get behind.
Well, and the other part is there are people, putting that aside, there are other people who are using these services, and it's quite helpful to them, right? It's cheaper than having a psychiatrist, and that it's actually, they're finding it to be useful. And the truth is, 99.9% of the people, it is hopefully helping, but then the question is, how do you prevent this kind of instance from happening?
Well, you wonder how much it's actually helping anyway. It's,
that's
there are pretty
always
strict
a question.
guidelines for therapists and counselors and psychoanalysts.
Cheese will be next.
Still to come on Squawk Pod, McDonald's rolling out extra value meals and lowering certain menu prices. CEO Chris Kempczinski joins us right after this.
This is where, with our franchisees, that's part of why we wanted to step in and co-invest with them to do this extra value meal program, to show that we're all in it together.
Welcome back to Squawk Pod from CNBC.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Andrew Sorkin along with Joe Kernen and Becky Quick. We are all back, and there's a lot of news taking place this morning. Some news that just broke earlier this morning. Kraft Heinz now planning to separate into two companies. The names of the companies will be determined at a later date, but one which is referred to as a global taste elevation. That's going to focus on shelf-stable brands like Heinz and Kraft Mac and Cheese. The other is going to comprise the North American grocery business, including brands like Oscar Mayer, Kraft Singles, and Lunchables. Expected that deal to close in the second half of next year.
They did a bang-up job when they got together coming up with a new name, I think.
Putting that together, you mean?
Kraft and Heinz.
Kraft and Heinz, and then
I
don't know what they paid for. I don't know what they paid for that.
The ketchup business is the business.
Brilliant.
By the way, of all the businesses, the ketchup business is the business. You would think that ketchup would be like a generic thing, but somehow Heinz ketchup is the game.
The way you combine ketchup and catsup is what I'm always struck with when you, right? Because it sounds like you're saying ketchup with something, but go ahead.
It is ketchup.
That stock, as you saw, down
ketchup.
more than 20%
Ketchup.
over the
Catsup
last year.
or ketchup?
McDonald's launching a new value menu with options including a $5 sausage McMuffin meal and an $8 Big Mac meal. And joining us right now to talk about it and much more is Chris Kempczinski. He is McDonald's CEO. And Chris, thank you for coming in this morning. This has been pretty widely telegraphed. You talked about on the conference call about how you really need to grab the value to bring customers back in. What happened? What was the evolution of this?
Yeah, well, extra value meals are back. It's, I think, a great day at McDonald's. And for us, we've been on sort of a value journey over the last year. We last year launched in the summer the $5 meal deal, which was a great success. Later, then we launched a buy one, add one for $1. All of that was under McValue. We also continue to have a lot of activity on our app. So if you're using the McDonald's app, there's great offers there. But the reality is that if you weren't using the app and you didn't buy McValue, where did you find value on the menu? And that was about 50% of the transactions were consumers who weren't using the app and weren't buying McValue. And so credit to our franchisees for recognizing we had a gap there where we needed to really come in with a strong message. And that's what we're doing here with this extra value meal. It's going to be all your McDonald's favorites, and it's going to be predictable. So you're going to know every single day when you come in that you can get McDonald's extra value meals at a great deal.
It's something to try and coordinate with all the franchisees, though, because you're splitting the costs on this between marketing and who ends up getting. You're paying for some of the franchisees' costs.
Yeah. I'd say our franchisees actually were very much in favor of this. It didn't take as much as maybe what you're suggesting. When this went to vote for our franchisees, which is how it works in our system, this was as close to unanimous as we get in our system for people to get behind this, because they recognize the extra value meal is one of those things that's kind of in the McDonald's DNA. I mean, when you drive into a McDonald's, you say, I want the number 1 or I want the number 4. And people have an expectation to see there to be a discount there. And so, we had to provide, I'd say, some support, particularly around the marketing side, because our calendar was already pretty full with other activities. But this wasn't something that required a lot of arm twisting with franchisees, because they recognize extra value meals and the predictability that the customer expects when they come into our restaurants. It's something we've been doing for a long time. We got away from it with all the inflation during COVID, but we're back to it now.
And you're moving fast. The stock's right off at all-time high. You can get $1 more at Chili's. I guess that's a higher. It's not a McDonald's. It's thought of as a casual dining or something. So if it's only $1 difference, you might go to Chili's. So you recognize that, and move quickly, right? Yeah,
and part of what we also saw was that, particularly with middle and lower income consumers, they're feeling under a lot of pressure right now. I think there's a lot of commentary about what's the state of the economy, how's it doing, and what we see is it's really kind of a two-tier economy. If you're upper income, earning over $100,000, things are good. The stock markets are near all-time highs. You're feeling, quite confident about things. You're seeing international travel. All those barometers of upper income consumers are doing quite well. What we see with middle and lower income consumers is actually a different story. It's that consumers under a lot of pressure in our industry. Traffic for lower income consumers is down double digits. And it's because people are either choosing to skip a meal, so we're seeing breakfast. People are actually skipping breakfast, or they're choosing to just eat at home. And so for our business, which has a significant group of consumers which are in that middle and lower income, we needed to step in with something like what we're doing here.
Do you find yourself, tiering different products though? Meaning saying to yourself, okay, there's going to be a lower income consumer, and we're gonna have this product for them. But then we have a luxury consumer that's walking in, and we're going to charge them, a premium price for some kind of premium product.
Yeah, we call it value ladders. So there would be something that would be an entry price point for someone who's looking for something that maybe they only have a few dollars in their pocket. So what can I buy for a few dollars in my pocket? And then we try to offer more premium items as well. For somebody who's maybe able to spend more money.
But because it's a two-tier economy, do you not get the benefit of wealthier people trading down that you might in a generalized economy or economic downturn?
We don't see as much, again, because that wealthier consumer right now isn't feeling under a lot of pressure. It's just, this isn't like what we saw in the Great Recession where that consumer, everybody was trading down. Right now, again, if you're upper income, you're feeling pretty good about things. And so we're not seeing as pronounced a trade down effect this time around.
And the chickens, it's back. The snack wraps are back.
Snack wraps are back. Permanently, $2.99, spicy ranch. Have you tried it?
Yesterday, the women in my family want those, and they said, did you ask him if he fired the person that got rid of the snack wraps? And you said we probably did.
We probably did, yeah.
But it was a while ago. I want to just ask one thing about MAGA versus Maha, because I would have thought that. There was a stigma, an anti-McDonald's sort of a stigma among, I don't know what you would call it, for lack of a better term, woke people. So I see that reversing a little bit. But at the same time, I see Robert F. Kennedy Jr. looking at the president when he's eating a Big Mac and rolling his eyes. It's almost like two competing narratives coming from the same administration. I've never wavered on McDonald's, as you know. Anything in moderation.
I think for us, part of this is a lot of the things that have fallen sort of under this Maha umbrella are all about artificials. They're about artificial preservatives, artificial flavors, artificial colors. Because the food that we're preparing in our kitchen is fresh, we actually don't use artificial colors, flavors, preservatives. Where you see it will be in things that some of our soft drinks that we serve will have it. Some of the toppings on a McFlurry, if you think about.
Supersize Me. That people think about that movie.
Yeah, so that was
fat.
Certainly a long time ago we had that as well.
Right.
But I think this is where on our menu we try to just make sure people have choice. So if you want to have a lower calorie option, if you want to have a more indulgent option, how do we just make sure
that you
don't
sell yogurt and apple slices anymore?
They do sell yogurt.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, we do.
Well, that's where I was going to go, which is we keep talking about the health of the consumer. I want to know about the health of the franchisees themselves.
Yeah.
And sort of regionally, where they're super healthy, where maybe they're less healthy.
Yeah.
How you think about that?
Yeah. There's no doubt that in the last, call it 4 or 5 years, the franchisees have been under a lot of cost pressure. They've been under cost pressure because food and packaging costs are up north of 40%. And you also have seen labor costs go up pretty significantly across the country. There's close to 30 states that have had significant increases in the state minimum wage. California notoriously introduced the $20 minimum wage just for restaurants that are 60 restaurants or more. So there's been a lot of cost pressure that's been on the franchisees, which in part has led to some of the price increases that you're seeing as well. I think through all of it, our franchisees are still doing well. We're certainly doing better than our competitors. If you think about where we were all-time cash flows, we're probably off maybe 10% from where our franchisees had all-time cash flows. That said, there are definitely pockets of the market, like in California, where there is much more pressure on that. And I think this is where, with our franchisees, that's part of why we wanted to step in and co-invest with them to do this extra value meal program, to show that we're all in it together, and that the cost pressures that they have, we're also not asking them to do everything on pricing. We're willing to step in this particular case and help them as well.
I think one of your predecessors, I just remember that instead of doing a lot of innovation, it was going to be fast, it was going to be fresh, it was going to be consistent from franchisee to franchisee, and I go to a lot of different ones if you travel.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a bad one, I don't think, recently. How does the corporate parent make sure that everyone's on the same page, the franchisees?
It all starts with our strategy, and one of our strategy is called Accelerating the Arches, and one of the things that we've said with the strategy is commit to the core menu. Our menu, about 60% of the menu is what we call core menu, which would be the Big Mac, the Quarter Pounder. If you have the golden arches outside the restaurant, you have to be having.
Do you have a bottom 10% of quality? Do you know franchisees
Oh, absolutely.
that are just
Absolutely.
bad?
Absolutely.
Trash doesn't get emptied. It takes
the
forever
the thing
at the
I love about
drive-thru.
this business is we have data on everything, and we have it down to the minute. So we are able to slice and dice restaurant performance.
What happens to a franchisee that's in that bottom, let's say 2 percentile or 5
Yeah, well,
percentile?
it starts with we try to improve them. And so sometimes a franchisee might not even know that they're in the bottom 10%. And then when we identify they're in the bottom 10%, then we go, why are you in the bottom 10%? And we'll work with them to develop a plan to try to now improve the performance of the restaurant. Over time, if that doesn't happen, then we have a different conversation. But our starting point is everybody that's in our system is trying to do a good job. So if they're not doing a good job, are we doing the right coaching to help a restaurant improve?
How big of an issue is finding labor these days, particularly when you talk about some of these higher wages that are out there?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of automation that's gone into the McDonald's where
Yeah.
you order yourselves before you walk in. The app, you're trying to get as many people as possible to order on the app. Is that all part of because of how difficult it is to find to hire
It's gotten
people?
a lot better around labor. Right now, we're not hearing. I was out in our restaurants a couple weeks ago, traveling around Kentucky and Georgia, and when I was talking to the franchisees, they all feel pretty good right now about being able to find labor. I think some of the things that you're talking about around kiosks, using your phone instead of going to the front counter, are driven more by the customer. The customer, in many cases, wants to be able to order off the phone. They want to just go to the kiosks. I know my own kids, they don't like to talk to anybody. They like to do everything themselves. So the changes that you're talking about are driven really more by the customer. But certainly there's opportunities for us to do automation. It's something we're always looking at with our franchisees. And I would imagine over time, particularly as AI gets developed, you'll probably see some opportunities for there to be more automation. But it's about making the restaurant easier to operate for people.
So you have areas like California where they've raised minimum wage to $20. You now have a new proposal from the administration, or a law that's now been put into place, that will allow no taxes on tips. What does that mean for your employees who don't get the benefit of that?
Yeah. Well, anything that is done to help restaurant workers, I'm in favor of. So I support no tax on tips. The issue with no tax on tips is it only benefited those restaurants that have tips. And so, as you're rightly pointing out, we don't do tipping in McDonald's, and so we don't get the benefit of essentially that tax relief there. Part of the other thing that I don't think most people realize is if you're a tipped restaurant, the minimum wage requirement there is $2.13 an hour.
$2.13.
$2.13 an hour. That hasn't been changed since 1991. As opposed to the federal minimum wage at $7.25, that was most recently changed in 2009. So right now there's an uneven playing field between if you are a restaurant that allows tips or has tips as part of your equation, you're essentially getting the customer to pay for your labor,
right,
and you're getting an extra benefit from no taxes on tips. So part of what I think we need to do in this minimum wage conversation is let's start with everybody should be paying the same minimum wage.
Meaning
and whether that's
that have tipped employees
tipped
as well.
and non-tipped. And we already know there's about 8 states that have no difference between tipped and non-tipped. And we know that in those states, poverty levels decrease. We know that turnover levels go down. We know that actually it doesn't lead to any job loss. So there's already been a model that shows that no tax on, or that the tipped wages can be at the same as the federal minimum wage. We just need to do that, I think, across all 50 states. And we've said repeatedly, we're open to conversations on raising the federal minimum wage.
Have you spoken with anyone in the administration about that?
We're in constant dialogue with them on various topics. This is one of those topics that we're in dialogue with them. And I'd say we have a good back and forth with this administration.
How do you grow? Does it have to be global expansion? Would you add things to the menu at this point, or just make everything better and fresher?
Yeah.
How are you going to grow?
All the above.
What would you add at this point? I don't think you should add it.
Well, there's a lot of chicken. So chicken is 2 times the size of beef. Chicken's growing faster than beef. Chicken right now, because of what's happened with beef prices, is a much better value.
Can you replicate a Chick-fil-A sandwich?
Well, we've got a great tasting McCrispy.
I know, but they got something there. I don't know what it is. And then you had that crazy, the spicy one.
Give McCrispy a chance. But we're pretty proud of our McCrispy sandwich. But we're adding chicken, as you noted. We've brought back the snack wrap. There's other things that we've done in other markets where we have wings in restaurants, where we have bone-in chicken. So there's plenty of expansion we can do in chicken. We're also doing some tests right now in 500 restaurants around beverages, looking at bringing in energy drinks, looking at bringing in cold brew, other things that we can do in beverages.
Cold brew beer
so there's
or coffee.
What's that?
Cold brew beer or coffee?
Cold brew coffee. Cold brew coffee.
Question, he talked global, and you're in all of these markets all over the world.
Yeah.
And there's a question about how the rest of the world views us.
Yeah.
McDonald's is as iconic an American brand as anything. Mm-hmm. How do they view us?
Yeah.
And how do you think about that?
Yeah. We've been tracking that since the beginning of, actually the end of last year. So we've done kind of 4 global surveys of consumers, and we've asked them, how do you feel about America, the country? How do you feel about American brands? And then how do you feel about McDonald's? And what we have seen is that in other markets, maybe the aura around America has dimmed a little bit. And we are seeing in those surveys as well that consumers are making choices to not maybe frequent American brands as much. That said, when we ask them, has that affected your visits to McDonald's? They say no, it hasn't affected. And so, when we look at that, I think part of this is we've been in so many of those markets for a long period of time, and there are businesses also locally owned. We're typically the largest employer in these markets. It's a local franchisees, the supply chain. So I think we're maybe a little bit more insulated.
Have you shifted how you market the brand in those markets? Meaning, there was a time where you marketed McDonald's as one of the great American brands. And are you shifting to making it feel like more of a local brand or more around the local community?
We are.
And what does that say, though, about the American brand?
I think we know that food is inherently a very local thing. People are embracing local cuisines. They want to support their local business. We're a business all about being in the community. We are seeing that there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of receptiveness for us to push more into that. I think, I don't know if I would say we leaned into our Americanness over the years. I think we're a beneficiary of that. But we're certainly, from a marketing standpoint right now, focusing much more on what we're doing within the communities to emphasize our locality.
If you feel that you have to lean away from being American?
Orange Man bad?
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
Yeah, I don't have an opinion one way or the other on it. I think for a period of time, there were a lot of brands around in the consumer space that were American brands that went into other markets. I think it's natural that at some point those brands move from being seen as an American export to being seen as just something that is local or indigenous to that country. And so for me, it's a natural evolution. I don't know if I would have a view that this is somehow a negative event. I think any brand, when you launch it into a country, you would hope that over time it would be accepted locally.
Gosh darn it.
Chris, what do you do about making up the Russian restaurants that you sold out? I think it was 850 restaurants. How do you get back to those levels?
Yeah, well, that was a significant event for us. We ended up taking about $1.4 billion write-off. We had 60,000 plus employees in Russia. I think when you exit a market that size, you don't just make that up overnight. And so for us, it's really about let's focus on the 115 other countries that we're in. I would say China for us continues to be a big growth market. It's our second largest market. We're building 1,000 restaurants a year in China. We still see good growth in China. But yeah, when you leave a market like Russia, which for us was, I think it was our third market that we went into outside of the US, when you exit a market like that, it is a significant hit to the business.
And your beef supply has to be just pristine no matter what. Beef coming into this country is highly inspected.
Yeah,
at this point.
we have a great supply chain team, and as you would imagine, we put a big focus on the quality of our food supply, the safety of our food supply. So I feel pretty good about what we're doing at McDonald's.
Chris, we want to thank you for coming in with us to talk about this news and everything else.
Yeah,
that you have
thank
going
you
on.
guys.
We appreciate it.
All right, appreciate it.
Chris
Thank you, that was
Kempczinski,
great.
All right.
CEO of McDonald's.
We'll be right back. And that's the pod for today. Thanks for listening. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern. To get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears, follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.